first things first, Troy, I want to know, how long were you a chaplain for?
I was a high school chaplain in Logan for about 7 years. Absolutely loved it. I was in two schools for half of that time, and then for the second half, I was just in one school.
Yeah. And was there anything in particular that drew you to become a chaplain, or in this work of chaplaincy?
Look, probably 6 months before I applied for chaplaincy back in 2005, I didn't know much about it, but I really loved the idea that was dawning on myself and also our church about getting out into the community, about adopting the community around you, loving, serving the local community that God's planted you in. And so our church adopted a school down the road, and we'd been doing some work in there for probably 12 months, doing breakfast club and playing basketball with the kids and stuff before school, and I absolutely loved it. I was doing Bible college at the time in my last year, and I was, this opportunity was put across, my desk, and I thought, this is exactly what I think myself and also my local church should be doing. We should be serving and adopting local community, local churches, and being, getting out there beyond the four walls of the church, if you like. Yeah. And so I applied at the end of 2005, and there we have it. We got the job, got into it.
Well, I know you're a very humble guy, and Troy doesn't like it when people speak into some of the stuff that he's done. And I guess for me, I really want to know. Obviously, you've made a big impact, as I said in the beginning, of some former students. But what were some of the initiatives that you enjoyed, I guess, running in schools, or things that you were like, hey, I should really speak into the need in this area for this particular school or for these particular students?
Yeah, a lot of it was listening. I know that sounds really not very glamorous. A lot of it was just being where the kids are and listening and doing what they love to do. And I love sport and music, and so that was kind of obvious to me as a bridge builder between myself and students. Also, being from New Zealand kind of helped in my area of town. Heaps of Kiwis in Logan, so that was just another little bridge builder. So we ran basketball competitions at lunchtime because the kids loved basketball. Some of the kids were getting themselves in trouble at lunchtime with nothing to do, and so we did that. We did touch competitions at lunchtime. We did leadership programs with some of the Pacific Island students, which was wonderful. Was able to connect with some other community agencies in the Logan area and invite them in, which was great. I know this sounds a bit funny, but I looked after the multicultural program at my school. I didn't teach anything, but I just got people in who I knew could teach, Samoan Siva or Sa or something like that, and that was a great way to build bridges as well. All the while, you're getting to know kids and finding out what's going on in their lives and encourage them. Some of the attitudes or things that they believed about themselves that was a bit negative. Then again, just provide encouraging words and speaking life into that. So a combination of all of those things at lunchtimes, before school, breakfast programs, all sort of fed into building relationships and speaking life and encouraging kids.
Hey, Troy, as you were sharing about being able to speak over like words of life over these students, I want to know who has spoken words of life over you in order for you to do that for others, because obviously that comes from a deep place of love and care. But often it's always interesting to know, well, who did it for you in order for you to do it for others?
Yeah. My wife's always been really, really encouraging about anything that I do for God, and also just in general. So having her support was massive. And in the early days of being a chaplain, she often came in and helped me out. So that's one person. I suppose my mother, when I was young, she was always very encouraging and worked really hard. She worked 2 or 3 jobs. She's a single mum. And for me and my brother and my sister back in New Zealand. So she was always very wanted to help people. And so I think I caught a bit of that. And my local church was just, my own pastor at the time was very encouraging, and a whole heap of people at my church, which I just loved to bits. Not only did they encourage me and speak life, but they came alongside me as well as I got into this new thing called chaplaincy. They came in and helped at school with the breakfast program. That was just incredible. It wasn't just me going out on my own. It was a whole community reaching a community, which was brilliant.
Yeah, it takes a village, right? It takes a village not only to raise a child, as they say, but it also to empower and encourage. And what you've said there captures perfectly of what doing life alongside students is all about, isn't it? It's actually being present, being available. But I think what I love about what you just said, and I often practice this myself, if ever I'm doing an event or initiative, or there's something that happens at school, I take my family with me.
Yeah.
So, and the reason why I do it, and I'm sure it may be the same reason why you do it, I want the kids to know that I actually enjoy my job and I'm actually a real person. It's not just, I get paid to hang out and play handball and shoot hoops and laugh and be friendly with the kids. Like, no, I genuinely have a sincere love and care for these students. And so often when I've taken my kids on campus or brought them on campus, or my wife comes with me for certain events, it's almost like they can't believe that I have a family. And they're like, They are real. They are, and they're here. We can actually see them. And so that is so important in terms of the ministry of presence, the ministry of doing, I guess, your work as a chaplain with your family. How have your family responded to that? Obviously, my family is still young. The kids are still young. And obviously you've had your kids and they're a bit older. How did they respond to serving in that particular school community? Were they like, drag my feet or do it because dad says it? Or did they respond positively? Because I'm sure at some points they were probably a similar age to these students that you were working with.
Again, in the early days, my kids were, youngish as well. So hanging out with high school kids was very cool. Very cool. And the kids at school, at my 2 schools, were fantastic. Like you said, is this your son, Troy?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. Oh, wow. And then they start talking to particularly my oldest 2 boys, who are probably the 2 that were involved the most. They were still probably in primary school. And so having a high school kid talk to them was pretty cool. And having all these high school kids connected to me made me pretty cool too to my kids, which was kind of helpful. But so that part was really positive. There are other times where you bring your family along to stuff, and whether they like it or not, they're kind of there. So
school awards or meetings where they just have to come because there's no one else to look after them.
Yeah, there was a couple of occasions where that was, but you mentioned that my kids are a little bit older now, so I've got a 21-year-old and an 18-year-old, a 13 and an 11-year-old. The 2 older boys, they look back on those times as really informative for them, shaping for them.
Wow.
Whether they liked it or not, they were there, but they could see what was going on as they reflect on it as they've got older. And it's been really faith building for them, and a bit of formation in their own faith has come because they've come along with me and their mother to get involved in a breakfast club or a camp with the kids or a lunchtime program.
Yeah.
So it's good. It's, as you say, it's good for your family if they can to be involved with what you're doing in ministry.
So, Troy, I'm fairly new to the chaplaincy role at my particular school, and one of the things that um, I I think about quite a lot is how do I get buy-in from administration and also teachers, because these are the two important groups of people that in order for me to I just know if I'm to succeed, I have to make sure that admin not just approve, but they think, hey, yeah, Ray's bringing good value to this and we're going to
Yeah,
support him this way. Not that they won't support, but obviously on paper they're like, well, he's a staff member, I guess we will have to support him. And I don't say it that way, I'm just over dramatizing it. But teachers
yeah,
especially, you're working
yeah.
with teachers who have a short time frame with students. What would you say would be some ways or some strategies as a new
Mm.
chaplain you could get buy-in from your school staff community?
Yeah. Well, it takes time. That's the first thing. Probably the easiest part of the job is to connect with kids, in my opinion. For me, it was, but it is a bit harder to build bridges with staff. Yes, their time is short, so you have to be really intentional and be patient. I'm talking a year to a couple of years before you get really familiar to them. Um, and teachers have got a lot going on in their life, and so you might not be on the top of their priority list. So being intentional about getting in their world and going there to serve. Um,
Right.
you know, some of the things that I did was find out what the teachers needed, um, see where my skill set and my gifting connected. So again, sports and music. So I would help out at HBE with sports, because I'd have a home economics teacher supervising the volleyball team, and maybe they didn't know much about volleyball, and so I know a little bit about volleyball. So I ended up coaching the volleyball team for a couple of terms, and that was really helpful to them. Music, I'd help out on a Friday afternoon and teaching guitar. You're matching up your skill set and your gifting with the needs of the school, and just putting yourself out there. You've got to take initiative and go go to their staff room, introduce yourself. Food is always good. Take food with you. Might be a bit hard with the COVID season at the moment, but I'd organise one of the elderly ladies from our church to do some baking every fortnight, and I'd take that in to each staff
Wow.
room over a long period of time. So that was good. That built a lot of profile and a lot of trust. The thing is too is when you do something, if you say you're going to do something, you're going to turn up. You've got to turn up every time,
Right.
and because you might have some skills in that area, you're value adding, you're helping. Be prayerful about it. I remember when I first started, kind of not quite knowing where I fitted, and so I prayed as I walked, and then I'd keep my eyes open. And then on the tennis court one day, for instance, there was a bunch of kids playing cricket, and there was a teacher struggling because they didn't know how to play. I'd played before. She ended up being like an English teacher or a geography teacher from Poland, and she was supervising cricket. Never knew anything about cricket, and so I ended up helping her and got to know those kids really well. Got to know her really well. She was very grateful. The HBE staff were really grateful that I'd helped out, and so you just build those trusts as you go along, and you build credibility as well. And as you build credibility and trust over time, you become a really trusted person in the school. You've got skills, you've got integrity. You say what you do what you say you're going to do. You do it well, and like you said before at the top of the interview, you're not there to bring glory to yourself and try to build up. Oh, what a great chaplain I am. It's not about that at all. You're there glorify God, but also to I guess reflect His love to others and to build others up. If you've got that opportunity to put the spotlight on someone else's great job, then that's a good thing too.
You have a new role, and that role is still in the area of empowerment, but now you get to oversee chaplains who are in schools. And so how has that role been for you, and what parts of that role are you really loving?
How's it been for me? It's been great. I went into the role because I wanted to grow as a person, as a follower of Jesus. It's been great to be able to share my experience as a chaplain with others who are maybe just starting out. I've also learned so much from other chaplains. My goodness, I've learned loads, and I'm still learning. So creative, so out of the box, our chaplains. 1,000 different ways to be able to love on a school community. It's just brilliant, and I just never get sick of that, seeing that happen and helping to facilitate that to happen. I do miss working with the young people though, because I only work with adults now most of the time, unless I do camps, which is the only time I get to work with young people. But apart from that, I love the learning. I love empowering and coaching young chaplains and older ones too. And I love building teams, teams of chaplains and teams of support around schools, because that's the end goal for me, is to build support around schools, local churches, businesses, all forming this great team that's there to take care of students and staff. And I've done that myself as a chaplain and just seen the benefit of it. And that's what I want to do, 50 times over in the 50 schools that I look after on the west side in Brisbane.
Well, Troy, thank you so much for your time. It has been, we could chat for ages, and I chat with you on a regular basis, at least once a week when we catch up at our CrossFit community. But I know that your work has had massive, massive positive ripple effects. And just wanted to affirm you, mate, to keep going. And I know that you and I are due for a coffee catch up again. But thank you again. And if you want to connect with Troy, I'm sure we'll put some details in this podcast somewhere in this video where you can connect with Troy, just to have a bit of a yarn, ask for advice and tips. That's probably the reason why I connected with him in the first place, was just to go, hey, what do you do? Would love to know how you impact people. And so I have greatly benefited from that. And because of that, I feel confident in what I do at my particular school as well. So thank you, Troy. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ray, and well done on what you're doing here with your podcast as well. Fantastic job.